About 2 months ago, my sister brought me 2 succulent arrangements. So I showed you a video of the other one that had some elephant bush and a little sedum burrito in there. This is the second one, and it's a lot bigger. There's a lot more plants in it, and honestly, it's doing really well overall. So she just had it on a table in her living room. It was kind of near a window, but not super close. The way that these plants have responded to that care is very different. These Haworthiopsis in the middle are doing great. Crassulas in here, they actually look pretty good as well. The Echeveria, not surprisingly, is doing the poorest. And then these sedums actually look okay, but they're just a little on the green side. These should normally be more of a bright orange. But she watered it maybe once a month. I am going to repot it, and I think for now, I think I'm gonna leave these 2 big ones in it and probably put back some of the crassulas, but I'm gonna undo the whole arrangement and rearrange it. I just wanna uproot everything and pull out the stuff that's not working and put back the things that are. So I'm gonna put it in my little trash bin, if you will, and I'm just gonna start pulling. This Echeveria popped right out. You can see it has a bunch of dead leaves on the bottom. It's lacking sunlight. You can see that by the way that the leaves are kind of curled downward. When succulents need less light, they'll curl up in a tight little ball. When they need more light, the leaves will flatten out, they'll get spaced apart, and the succulent will lose its color. But it definitely needs more light to start having these leaves curl back up again. You can also see the changes in watering and in growth here. This stem at the bottom is really nice and plump. It was getting plenty of water, plenty of light. The leaves were super close together. And then this is honestly probably when my sister got it, where it starts getting really thin and narrow. Part of that's from lack of sunlight, and then part of it is from just being watered very infrequently. And we have this really nasty root ball here that's just super tight, clumpy soil, and the roots aren't doing super well. It's probably part of why it didn't thrive even without very much water. It's just the roots couldn't really absorb anything and probably weren't getting it when she did water. So that I'll loosen up in a little bit. The sedum, this one looks like it was actually maybe just a cutting. It barely has any roots on it. Now, granted, this has been without water for about 2 months, so the soil is super dry, which could be part of why everything's coming out really easily. There's just not a lot of roots here to begin with. Okay, I'm really curious. Yeah, wow. Okay, so even these Haworthiopsis, their roots are much thicker, but very few of them here. I'm gonna pull off some of these dead roots. I find that that helps encourage new root growth also. But this looks really healthy. It is, it's pretty thin. If you see when I squeeze this, there's not a lot of resistance. This is probably another good example. Someone called this the taco test for watering. So these leaves are very flimsy for how Haworthias usually are, but it looks really good, and it really won't look much different when it gets more water, other than the leaves will be a bit more firm and plumped up. All right, that one's coming out last. So this is a ripple jade. It's not great, but it has very tiny growth here. I love this plant. I love using it in arrangements because kind of soft, and the ripples fill in the gaps really nicely between other plants. So definitely keeping this one, but we're definitely gonna have to break up that. And then this looks just like a traditional jade. Whoever made this arrangement definitely made it with cuttings, which is totally fine, but it's just interesting. You can see that just because it's like a bare stem with a few roots on it. And another one. Okay, here's another ripple jade. Ripple jade tends to like more water than other crassulas. You can see here, oh, there goes the leaf. It's not done super well, but this is definitely savable, and it won't take much work to get it back to looking healthy. One more crassula in here. I love having this bin to unpot in because it just keeps everything really tidy, and then I don't have to clean up big mounds of soil everywhere as I deconstruct. So here's something that's interesting to me. This is a Haworthiopsis, and this is a Haworthiopsis. This is likely fasciata. There's also attenuata, and I can't remember which one's which, but I'm pretty sure this is fasciata because it doesn't have the lines in the middle. I believe attenuata is the one that has lines on the inside of the leaves too. So Haworthiopsis, really cute. This one has a similar look, but is much bigger. These, however, are not the same variety at all. This one, the leaves will stay fairly small like this, and this one, the leaves are obviously much, much bigger, but this will never grow to look like this. They're just different plants. So this is one of the reasons why I like deconstructing arrangements. I like pulling stuff all the way out because it's easier to get an idea of how healthy the plants are. You can pull off the dead leaves easier. And in the case of this guy, you can also see the babies and separate those out too. Yeah, there's just a bunch of dead leaves here. Stuff like this, just pull it off. And you can see this has a little baby off to the side. It does have, oh, okay. Well, I was gonna say I was gonna leave it attached, but I'm not leaving it attached apparently. Typically these will have their own roots, but this one's definitely big enough that even though it doesn't have its own roots, it will root pretty easily. All right, so now we have this empty pot. Well, empty of plants. I don't like the look of this soil. I don't know, actually, it's not bad. It's not bad. I think what I'm gonna do is really compacted though. So let's just loosen it up. I also, I'm not sure if it had, let's see if I can find it. It has a drainage hole down here. Yeah, it doesn't have a screen over the drain. So I'm just gonna dump it out. Okay, yeah, you can see this is mostly organic that settled to the bottom. I'm gonna put a drainage hole, or drainage screen, excuse me, on the bottom. Put some of this soil back in, some of that soil in. Now I gotta decide which plants are going back in this. Something to keep in mind here is the crassulas and the haworthias can be low light plants. Haworthias, definitely lower light plants. Crassulas can go either way. A lot of times they'll get like a really pretty stress color if they get more light. What will not work in medium light is this echeveria and these sedums. So I'm not gonna put these back in because they're very high light loving succulents. These little ripple jades, even though I like the idea of having them in this arrangement, these are kind of struggling. So I think I'm gonna plant these on their own. I feel like this fasciata is just out of place in this arrangement. So I'm gonna just stick back in these three other Haworthiopsis instead, and not include that one. And then we'll do all of the jades in with it. One of the things I like to do when I'm making an arrangement is kind of lay things out where I want them to go. This will give me an idea of where I wanna plant stuff. And then we'll just fill in with these jades kind of around the edges. I have 4, that's awkward. So is 6, but 6 feels like it's working right now. So I have 4 cuttings of these jades. These look different. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I think part of it is just these are a little bit more stressed and underwatered, but the leaves are a tiny bit longer. They're probably the same. This is probably a good example of how the way you care for a succulent can change how it looks and make it hard to identify. Here's what we'll do. I think I'm gonna just put these like this. We'll just group those 2 together and those on the side. So these are all big enough that I'm able to push them into the soil really easily. The stems are really strong. So I'm just gonna put more soil in here and then put all the plants in. Now you can see this has a really funky curve to it. So I'm actually going to like hook it into the soil. This one will go in here. And you know what I realized I forgot to do? I like to take pictures before I deconstruct stuff. I forgot to do that with these. Whoops. But we'll definitely take a picture when we're done and I'll add it to the succulent tracker app because I haven't even put these in. Like my sister gave them to me and I stuck it next to my plant stand, and I have completely ignored them for 2 months. All right, I am going to just put a little bit of soil around the edges. I'm gonna leave a bit of room. I don't have any top dressing with me at the moment, but I think this would look really nice with some top dressing, maybe like a gold color. And I have a variety of scoops that I use with my soil. I typically use this one with top dressing, or just as we get down to the end here. Normally I would put the pot all the way into my soil bin, but this pot's a little too big for that. But I like putting it in the bin just so I don't make a mess on the table and I don't waste soil, because all the excess soil that would fall off if I'm not being careful goes back into the bin. Alrighty, there it is. Nice and cleaned up. And I'm gonna wait a day and then I will water it. But of course I will take a picture of it, add it to the Succulent Tracker app, and that way I can record when I water it and have a really good idea of what's happened to this. If anything goes wrong or if things go well, then I'll be able to know how I've been caring for it. While it is really fun to have succulents all together in an arrangement, as you can see from the way this looked in the beginning, not all succulent arrangements last forever, and I would argue no succulent arrangements last forever. But I do like combining succulents that have similar light needs, similar water needs, and are relatively the same size. I'm curious to see if this little guy actually thrives in there on its own, being so much smaller than these bigger ones. These can go a lot longer without water than this little one can. It'll be a really good experiment, and overall I think this arrangement should do quite well.